the role of money in your life? You will find that you have one of these two answers. Either money creates safety and security in your life, or money has the idea of it helps me live the greatest life. See, most of us think more is better. More is not always better. More living is better. Living your life from the way you want to live is way better than just more money. But people think that, oh, all my problems would get solved because of more money. That doesn't happen. That is, in my experience, has not happened. In my conversations have not happened. In my coaching with thousands of people has not happened. People make more money, they have the same pain, they have the same story, and they feel the same broke like they were when they had less money. What would an amazing life look like to you, right? What is it? What does it include? Let's write down everything that we can imagine. We write these experiences down and people go, wow. And we write down and we go, okay, what is the cost of this life? What is the cost of this life? And what you would find is...
We had a conversation pre-show that I want to go back into because I think it'll be super interesting for our listeners. And we were talking about money. And we were talking about abundance versus scarcity. We were talking about utilization of not chasing money for the wrong reasons, but allowing it to become a source of abundance in someone's life. I want to just dive deep back into that topic and have a conversation with you about that because it's something that I've been in the financial industry for 22 years, and money can get very, very dirty. It can be a subject that brings people down into a place where they feel shame, where they feel uncomfortable, where they feel, like this is something they can't attain. It can also be the root of all evil. And so it's such an interesting dynamic. I'd really love to capture your thoughts on this.
So I want to really decipher a little bit, and I'll open up some questions. I'm a coach, so I tend to ask a lot of questions. And I would ask these questions to everybody that's listening and watching, and we can also talk about it, Scott, if you feel comfortable with it. But firstly, the whole point of money being evil or source of evil or money can get dirty, these are all stories that come not from money, but from people that had money or did something with money. If you really look at them, if you really get a chance, and I'm sure you have had that chance, Scott, I've had a chance to meet a lot of really, really wealthy people. And most of the time what I've found is they are actually incredibly generous. They are incredibly kind. They're actually really giving individuals. They're actually really good people. They may have done bad things in the moments where we have done bad things. They just get more highlighted. So if somebody who's really wealthy throws trash on the street accidentally or deliberately, it is a lot more highlighted than somebody who is everybody, right? So the highlighting of certain behaviors of individuals that are actually commonplace, if you look around, if you just look around, you would find that, oh, that happens. Like breakups happen, relationships go bad, people sometimes have a perspective on what a good deal and a bad deal is. This is a fun thing, right? So if you go on HBO, there's a series, and we were literally watching this yesterday. I don't remember the title of the series, but it's a series that was made on Taylor Swift and Scooter Braun.
Oh, yeah, I heard this is really good. I heard it's really good.
Yeah, so if you're a Taylor Swift fan, you're gonna hate me right now, but don't hate me. Listen to this, right? If you go ahead and watch this series, it has perspective one, which is Taylor's story, and then perspective two, that is Scooter's story. If you are an unbiased person, and I'm not a Swiftie per se, so I love Taylor Swift, but I'm not really attached, or I'm not like, oh my God, she's the best in the world. She's a great person, I'm sure. So I was a little bit more, unattached to whose story is what. If you look at it from that point of view, you'll go, oh, either of them could be right. But one, depending on who you like more, will look like the devil if you only hear one side. So is money bad? Or people do things when they have money and they get highlighted, and that makes us feel that money is bad. So first, I want to change the perspective, because it's really hard to be wealthy if you think money is evil. Or because we inherently as human beings don't want to be evil. Like none of us wake up and say, you know what would be great? It'll be great to be evil. No, we don't wake up like that. That's not what we want to do. We want to be good people doing good things in the world. Most of us are like that, which effectively means if we think this thing is evil, we will constantly fight it. We'll constantly make sure that doesn't happen in our life. And that tends to be the case with money, is we have created great association about rich people are evil or money is evil. And because of that, we almost unconsciously push away wealth from us. Now let's talk about feeling like you don't have enough or feeling like you'll never make enough and so forth. And that's where the question comes. I want to ask everybody that's listening or watching this conversation is ask yourself the question of what's the role of money in your life? And why does that role, or what is the role and why is that role true for you in for money in your life? And you could ask this to your partner as well, by the way. So it's a great relationship question as well. And the reason why we ask this question is because you will find that you have one of these two answers. Either money creates safety and security in your life, or money has the idea of it helps me live the greatest life. Now, the people who think money creates safety have really big bank accounts but live terribly. These are the people who don't go on vacations. They wipe in $7 million in their bank account and they would never enjoy that money. These are the people that are driven that way. Right? These are people with big bank accounts, really poor life, right? The other category of individuals are people who always report that they're broke, but they're incredibly resourceful. If they really want something, suddenly they can come up with money, but they are always broke. Right? Now, these are two extremes, of course. If you can find the balance between those two, that's the way to live your life. Find the balance of security and living the best version of life. And that's why the second question is so important, is not only what's the role of money, but why is that role important to you? Right? If you go, you know what? The role of money in my life is so I can live my greatest life. I want to enjoy every single day. You tend to then have a sense of comfort with what you do with your money, right? You suddenly go, oh, it's okay if I bought that car because I thought that's giving me the living experience that I wanted in my life. And that's okay if it means that I don't have a 401k to boast about, but you get comfortable with it, right? The third question that happens post the second question is how much money do you really want? How much money do you really want? See, most of us think more is better. More is not always better. More living is better. Living your life from the way you want to live is way better than just more money. But people think that, oh, all my problems would get solved because of more money. That doesn't happen. That has, in my experience, has not happened. In my conversations have not happened. In my coaching with thousands of people has not happened. People make more money. They have the same pain. They have the same story. And they feel the same broke like they were when they had less money. Literally, there was a client of mine who made twice as much money in about an 8-month period that I was checking in with her. I was like, hey, okay. So she was like, I feel so broke. I feel like I've not made any progress and da 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 da. And she was going on. And I was like, all right, that's okay. It's okay to feel like that. Let's see, how much money are you making right now? She gives me a number. I was like, last year around this time, how much money were you making? She gives me half the amount of money she was making. I was like, so last year you're making half as much money and you're reporting the same concerns. Now you're making twice as much money and you're reporting the same concerns. Is it money or is it you? Right? Is it the story that you tell yourself that, oh, more is more, and if I don't get more and more, I will always feel broke? Then, well, good luck. You can make $7 million today and you'll still feel broke. Right? There's no end to that cycle. So these are some important questions to get the party started. What do you think about these questions, Scott?
Well, I think that it's absolutely in line with my train of thought through my career in 22 years of running financial services companies and building a business from scratch and working with people with money. These are the very challenges we see. I've had clients come in and cry to me that they can't spend their money, especially the World War II generation. So several of them have now passed, but I can remember a decade ago sitting down with a particular client and he has tears. This is a small business owner. He had several $1 million. He was sitting down and crying at my desk because he couldn't spend it. He knows he wants to. He knows what he wants to do with it, but he couldn't get out of his own way because of how he grew up. He was so caught in that space. And I've also dealt with people that are killing it and they are empty and broken and lost. I think I had to personally, I think it's always good to share personal stories with our listeners, and they're used to hearing these versions. Personally, growing up without a whole lot of extra resources, watching my parents struggle at times, knowing we didn't have extra, made me chase money when I was early on in my career. And I definitely thought that if I just made more money, everything would get better or easier. And it was interesting because I was in the world of finance and actually living in a space where money conversations were so easy for me. things that I talk about, people don't talk about at their dinner table. They're petrified to cover these topics, and we would bring them up in everyday conversation. I found myself talking about things that other people were very uncomfortable with, and it's really, really interesting. I had a major shift where I literally went from that scarcity mindset of security, and a lot of it changed by the circle that I surrounded myself with. And what I mean by that is I had to get out of the space where everybody was chasing it together. I was never a keep up with the Joneses. When all my friends bought the brand new cars and we were successful, I drove the same old truck. I did all these things because I just felt like I was doing the right thing. But I was just doing exactly what you described. I was getting better at how I made money, how I saved money. I was a steward, but I was still nervous. I was still scared. I was still petrified of what would happen if it wasn't there. The shift came from a couple of things: the circle I surrounded myself with, the abundance mindset of knowing and believing in my skills. I went through a major M&A deal last year in 2023, and I found myself telling some of our partners, if you made absolutely nothing out of this, which they did not, they did quite well, but if they made absolutely nothing from this, what you have learned going through this is worth 10x what you will be paid. The wisdom, the knowledge, the experience, this has given a whole new platform. And that logic has been how I've gone into the next chapter. And now I really have seen, really in the last decade or so, maybe more now, but it definitely in the last decade, to your point, being a steward, being something that I can genuinely create when I need to. Opportunities, visualization, identifying the goal, putting my mind to it, and excelling and exceeding. And so I love the questions that you're asking. I love the listeners to go through these. And I love the fact that you suggested going through them with your partner, because the last point I'll make is so many people come in and they're not sitting on the same page, especially when it comes to finances. And they are one sitting at that security space, the other sitting at that spend it. Almost all the time, they're sitting at the opposite sides. And they let themselves get trapped into the other's logic. So the one that always wants to save lets their spouse convince them to spend ungodly amounts of money that don't make sense. But they're like, well, whatever, I never give in to him. And then all of a sudden they spend all this money. Then they feel horrible about themselves. And they come home and they are out of control and they can't get control of their own lives and they struggle. And then the other goes for the other person who's spending. And then when they save and they feel like they're not living their life, they're dying inside. And so having these conversations and asking these questions of each other and exploring together is so valuable. I love that you brought that up.
Thank you, Scott. And it's so true for most relationships, actually. And it's a good thing. People think it's a bad thing, but it's actually a really good thing if you are both with a different point of view. Because what you become is a channel for the other person to live a more integrated life that is more thought through instead of just operating from their programming. So let me give you an example of me and my wife, because we are actually completely different. I grew up kind of like you, Scott. Like you mentioned, I grew up in a household of 22 people in India in a small town called Jaipur. I'm not highly educated. I built my life from ground up by traveling the world and learning from as many mentors and coaches as I possibly can. That's kind of how I have built my life today. And so my default is security. Money's job is to make me feel safe every single day. That's the place I operate from. That's the questions I ask. That's the kind of investments I make. Even my investment philosophy is based on that. My wife, on the other hand, had a really traumatic childhood in a way. She grew up in Chicago, but she lost her parents when she was 19, and her brother. So very early on in life, she said, life's to capture, life's to like hold on to and celebrate every single day, because you don't know what happens tomorrow, right? So of course she operates from a place of how can we make greatest experience of today? Like she's not thinking 3 years. I mean, she does. She's a great thinker, but like her primary objective is today is a great day. Let's live it to the fullest, right? Now we are two opposite ends of the spectrum if you would think about it, right? Because I'm thinking security at all times and she's thinking life's too short, right? And it's fair for both of us to believe that. But because we have these conversations and we're very open about it, what we get to do is we get to ask a common question to each other. And the question is, what will an amazing life look like to you on a daily basis, right? And that would be the fourth question I want to offer today on the call is what would an amazing life look like to you, right? What is it? What does it include? Let's write down everything that we can imagine, right? What is it? It means, oh, we travel 3 times a year. Great. What kind of places are we going to go? Oh, we're going to go here, here, and here. I want to be able to, eat out once a week because, anyways, we don't like really eating out because of the seed oils that are there in every kind of cuisine and every kind of food that is out there. But sure, we still want to, whenever we go out, we're going to eat really nice food like Michelin stars and onwards. And like once a week at best, or maybe twice a week. All right, great, awesome. We love date nights, which we want to do exciting experiences, and we would do them every week. It requires us to always book a hotel room and so forth. So we write these experiences down, and people go, wow. And we write down, and we go, okay, what is the cost of this life? What's the cost of this life? And what you would find is once you identify the cost of life, it is much more attainable than what you would think. Because we think, oh, it's impossible, dude. Because people write things that are just insane. That are so far out of reality that you don't even want it. You're just chasing it because somebody else said so. So, for example, people would say, I would like to drive a Lamborghini. Really? Would you like to? Have you ever sat in one? It's the most uncomfortable bullshit car. Like, if you want to drive a Lamborghini, you're 22 probably, because you've never seen anything like that in life. But the more mature you get, you're like, no, I don't want a Lamborghini. It's uncomfortable. It's just for show. You can't really hit the speed ever. So what's the point of having a car like that? It's a stupid car to have. But you don't ask those questions. And because you don't ask those questions, you write these random things on the item of dream life instead of saying, no, what's honestly going to make me feel good every single day? I want to jump out of bed. I want to feel excited. I want to have the energy. I want to do work that's meaningful. I want to make an impact. I want to live an abundant life. But I also want to have all of these other things. Once you write it down, it's very achievable. And then you stage yourself and step yourself towards it. Like, hey, listen, the first year we may not be able to do 3 European holidays, but what about 1? Right? Let's start there. So we have a starting point, but now both of us agree to the life we get to create. And it also changes the setting of how you work as a person, because now you're chasing a lifestyle. You're not chasing this arbitrary number that means nothing really, even if that hits your bank account. I want to make $1 million. Really? What are you going to do with it? Like, what are you going to do with it? Oh, but that person has it. No, it doesn't matter. That person has it. That person may have it for a very different reason, may have a very different chase. Why do you need the money? I'm not saying money is bad. You should have as much as you want. But the question is, do you know why you want it? Or you're just chasing it to, flaunt it on social media? Because you can flaunt it on social media at 100,000 and live a lifestyle that looks like a millionaire's lifestyle. It's actually really easy to present it on some social media channel.
Yeah, it's something that we have discovered in our lives, in our marriage, quite well, and having to have those discussions, especially when you have transformative moments. I mean, I've listened a little bit to your story, and I know that you went through a moment where your CEO and your life and your career aren't as correlated as you want them to be. And I feel like sometimes it's very easy for us to fall into those spaces where we have to reassess and rediscover what's most important to us because life changes. So I'll give you a great example. We're going through, and I talk about this on the podcast a lot. We're becoming empty nesters essentially, where my oldest son is going to college in 3 weeks, and my youngest son lives 3.5 hours away at a academy for soccer. We talked about soccer pre-show, and so we're having to reestablish everything in our lives to how often we're going to be in one place versus another. What is the expectation that we each have? Because we have different expectations of what's needed. Where we are going to travel. We've never been able to travel together. She's retired now, which allows us to do things together, which we've never been able to do. It's been me doing these things. And then what do you feel like when you're away from your family? You're like, oh, I can't wait to go to this place for the first time. You get there, and as soon as you get there, you do 1 or 2 things. You're like, oh, I just want to get home. I want to be home with my kids. I'm missing a big soccer game. It's like this. I don't want to live the life where I constantly am missing something that's there. Instead, we want to be solely focused on the present state, because that's where that peace, that's where that success, that's where that comfort really does lie. And so we're working to establish that as we speak, and we have to do it in two different ways. I'm the conversationalist. I will talk about anything and everything. I will lay it all out there. I'm not afraid, and I will get bullets from her. I will get
Yeah.
moments of like, well, I think we could do this, or I don't want to do that, or let's try this, and so it's finding how not only to have those conversations, but how to implement and execute those conversations that can be even more valuable. Where are you having them? Is it on your date night with your wife? Is it when you get the hotel? How and when are as important as what you're saying.
I think there are many ways to do it, but here's how I like to do it. So not just a money conversation, but we now do an annual meeting where me and my wife would just sit down just by ourselves. We'll have the kids being watched by somebody or whatever the case might be. But every year we'll sit down for about 3 days, and in 3 days we'll just evaluate everything. It includes our relationships. It includes our money stories. It includes our sex life. It includes anything that really is important to us at that time, our businesses, our career, our opportunities, what's important to us right now personally, ourselves, us together. Like, well, how are we doing as a relationship? And that would be the big conversation. That would be the big conversation that sets us on the path of kind of reviewing the past year and setting up the next year, right? That's the big one, right? But on a week to week basis, date nights are a great spot to be able to rediscover and reevaluate certain things that are important to you as they come up. So, for example, I merged my company with a larger company, Mind Valley. So I built a company called EverCoach, which is a coach training institute. And then we merged into another organization called Mind Valley, which is arguably world's largest and highest rated personal training platform. And now it's called Mind Valley Coach. Now, as that merger happened, of course, there was a good amount of transaction that also happened for it. And that happened 3 months ago. So it was middle of the year. We didn't know that transaction will happen 6 months ago when we had our big meeting. So we sat down and we said, okay, well, how do we want to look at this money that we're going to get? Right? How do we really evaluate the different nuances that are involved in this? Taxes, place we want to live, what's our next season of life looking like? But we didn't wait for an annual meeting for that. I just didn't say, hey, you know what? I owned EverCoach because I started EverCoach before I met my wife. I just get to decide money. That's not how you do money well. That's how, if you're doing money that way, where it's your approach, is because there's either ego involved or you don't trust your partner. I trust my partner. So I would go in and I would go, hey, listen, this is what we're going to get. These are some of the options that I can think of. What do you think we should do? And then we would collaboratively go, well, this feels right. This doesn't feel so right. This feels aligned. We want to also make sure we are living and enjoying this money. We're not just thinking about the future and so on and so forth. And we find that. And we decide that on not every week basis, because I think money conversations, once you get the big one out, you're good. You need to talk about maybe once every 3 months, 6 months, maybe. It's not something that you need to have a daily conversation with. You might need that when you just start the new behavior, right? So let's say somebody who's never talked about money to their partner, right? Here's how I would approach it. I would first find if you can take a 2-day holiday. Go to a place that is calm and relaxing, not something that is exciting. So don't go to Vegas to have a money conversation. Go to Zion, the mountain, to have the money conversation. You still want it to feel expansive. You still want to feel and come from abundance, but you don't want to feel like you need to spend money, right? So it needs to be not chaotic, right? So Vegas is very expansive, yes, but it's also very chaotic. Or New York is really chaotic. If you can go a little outdoors, is better. Mountains are great. Beaches are great. Anything that's calming. That's the setting that you start with. Then take a piece of paper. Do it not on computers and devices, because usually they're distracting and there's something else that's happening always there. And write yourself the questions that are important. You can start with the questions that we talked about already. These questions are great starting points. And what you will find is the values that both of you have around money is probably so different, is what's causing the challenge between how you are doing money right. It's not that you're trying to do bad, it's just your programming, your avoidance, your history, your parenting, or the people that parent you, or father figures or mother figures, have influenced the way you look at money. It's not the truth about money, it's the influence you have about money. right? Now you get to choose. You get to choose, do I want to continue to stay influenced by this story, or I want to create a new story, right? If you want to create a new story, again, you collaboratively get to create it. Or for now, you just find a common story, right? There's a common vision of life, common lifestyle that we want, things that we're comfortable with, things that we're not comfortable with. What you don't want to do in these conversations come from the challenges of the present, because everybody has challenges in life. Because life is not created by living in the state of challenge. You create a life by living in a state of possibility, of trusting that it'll all work out. And because you trust that it works out, you live in a place of possibility. The curiosity is different versus, oh, but we can't afford this, or we can't have this, or we cannot do this, right? Instead of that, you think about what can we do to do this, right? What are the possibilities, right? Great questions to ask yourself is, what is it that I can do with what I have? Because that keeps you in that rhythm of, there are certain things I have, certain things I don't have, but I can do what I can. Another great question to ask yourself is, what is it that I can do something about, or what I can't do anything about? Right? There are things that you can't influence, right? So there's no reason for you. It's a stoic question, to really great question to ask yourself, is to go, if I can't control it, there's no point crying about it, right? Because I can't control it, right? But what is it that I can control? Right? Because it helps you really stay in the presence of, what is it that I can do? So these are some great questions to ask yourself, ask your partner, and the collaborative answers is what you're really looking for. And the big reminder for anybody who is having this conversation is to suspend your ego, which is hard. It's not something that I just say it and now you don't have ego, right? It takes work, it takes effort, it takes time. But if you can suspend your ego, and you can come from a place of a common understanding that you both love each other in relationship, and if you're just doing this for yourself, then that you love yourself, and that even in moments where you don't honor yourself, or you're not in alignment with yourself, it doesn't mean you don't love yourself or you don't love the person that is with you. It simply means you're having a moment, that you're human, and there's no reason to feel shameful or guilty about it. It just is part of being a human being and part of the human experience. So if you can reflect on that and operate from that place, I would think money conversation will become significantly easier for anybody that is trying this right now.
Well, it's great advice for all uh, major conversations in a relationship or in a business. I find that when you focus solely on the challenge, to your point, what we're doing is we're boxing ourselves in to only focus on the things we can't control. It's not the things that we can. When we were talking about whether or not our youngest son was going to move away, our conversations oftentimes would go into a place where it was all the things that we didn't know the answers of. And, I had to center us above that. I had to say, hey, we're going to solve all those questions. But for right now, what are the most important big picture items? And this is, from being a CEO, this is CEO, COO space. And sometimes you have to alter the role. Sometimes you're going into the ground up planning. Sometimes you're starting from the vision. And if you have a great working relationship, I have a great COO who I work extremely well with. And every time we disagree about something, the only thing we disagree on is how we're visualizing the success of what we're working towards. We're not working towards different things. One is working from the ground up. COO, they see it like you're building a Lego house. These basic things go on the bottom, and then we build it up from there, and then we build it up from there. I see everything at the finished Lego box. I look at the end. I look at exactly what it's supposed to look like. We build towards that, and then we go back to the beginning to start building the steps. Yeah. So to your point, it's so good to focus on the things that we can control, to not box ourselves in around the challenges, and it allows those things to kind of fall into place through your teamwork. And it's so successful. These are things that we a lot of times have no problem doing in teams and at work and in other settings, and then we come home and it's way more challenging. And maybe some of that is the ego. Maybe it's the role that you're in. So many people have designed and designated roles within the family, and a decision forces you to step outside of that role or have an opinion of something you don't normally control. And that can be very challenging for the person that's been in the lead in that space for a long time. So really, really good rules of the road for money and just about any conversation we're having in a marriage or relationship.
True, true, absolutely true. And Scott, you're so on point. These are important conversations to have. And in relationships, we tend to not have it because money, like you shared previously, has so much shame associated with it. It has so much I don't know how the other person will feel about it. So we try to put it under the rug. And then we wonder why we have money fights all the time. Because we never really sat down and said, what does it even do for it? What is the role of money? How much do I really want to make? And why is this important to me? And once you get clarity on that, you start to find, and at least in my experience, what I found working with people from across the globe at this point, and I'm going to give a American number, but it is applicable if you translate it to different countries. About $100,000. Most people would be very happy if they were making just about $150,000, uh, and per person, so about 300,000 as a family, and usually they would be able to live the life they want to live, but they seem to get so obsessed with these devices that we have because people throw so much firstly a lot of lies, but sometimes truth about their money, but they throw it on as if it's a thing to shame somebody else for not having it. And so we feel shameful when we watch it. We go, well, they get to have this best life, but we don't know the cost of that life. We don't know if we actually want what this person has in the life. And it tends to be a lot of times single men and single women. Very few relationship people who have at least matured in their relationship would say, "Look at my car." It's not because flaunting your car is bad. If you love your car, you love your car. That's okay. But but as you become a mature individual, you realize what's really important is family. What's really important is how you feel, not how you make others feel, right? Because if you flaunt your car, yeah, you will make somebody feel jealous, but that doesn't make you feel good. That makes you feel like shit. If not that day, a few days later, right? Because that's not what a human thing to do is. And that's my, I might be a little uh, I think it's called noise. No, like a little childlike in that. Like my belief is very much that we are functions of love. We are bodies of love, and there is no at all times. All human beings, even the ones that we hate, even if we think they are the enemy, are actually operating from love. Their understanding of love may be different than ours. Their understanding of how love is expressed may be different than ours. How they do things in the world may be different, maybe unethical, maybe wrong from our point of view. But the person who's doing it is always doing from a place of love. There might be 1% of the people that are not, but 99% of us operate from a place of love. We just don't agree with their version of love. We don't agree with how they present it and so forth. But if we could lean into that belief and understanding, I feel everything gets easier. Like our relationships gets easier, our partnerships get easier, our work gets easier, our everything gets easier.
Yeah, I completely agree. It's interesting because a lot of the times with social media, I call that the show and tell. Like it's the show and tell generation. Everybody wants to post up there what they're doing. It actually negatively sometimes, I don't want to say negatively. I want to say it impacts me in a way where I feel the need to not share more of what I should probably be sharing. And so this is a challenge I've had in elevating our brand and elevating our podcast and doing the other things. My teams will be like, "Hey, you need to show some of the things that you're doing. You're doing so many great things and cool things in the community and fun things." And I believe in what I do so much and I love what I do so much that I often find myself not wanting to share it because I feel like it almost cheapens it because of the way that social media has catered around this look at me generation. Look at me in my car, to your point. Look at me, and and there's a deep confidence and love I have for both how I function and why I do it that gives me this confidence to not need that affirmation. But at the same time, you also have to remember that the more you share, the more you impact others, the more you build that abundant mindset and you don't hold on to those beliefs. And so it is a really interesting dynamic, but you'll notice this when you see social media posts. Just go to someone's page and look at at the center of their page? Is it them? Is it their car? Is it their family? Is it cooking in the kitchen with their spouse and their kids? You know,
Yeah, and
these are so
it's a great
interesting.
question to also ask, like you said, Scott. What's the like how we were asking, or what's the purpose of money? Ask yourself, what's the purpose of social media, right? So for me, for example, social media is not about my personal life. It has elements of my personal life because it's still my personal profile, but it's more about the work that I do in the world. So I don't feel I'm not sharing. I share everything there that I think is valuable to the other person. That's the purpose of social media for me, which is why you'll never see my car on my social media because it doesn't matter. It doesn't add any value to you as a person that is watching or listening to anything, at least from my point of view as of now. I may share my struggles. I may share my family because I want you. I also believe that today the examples that we have in society of people who are successful have become so sure, like this is ridiculous. I heard it the other day, or somebody told me this the other day, that there was some really successful model that says it is it is it is a novelty or something to be divorced in your 30s. Now, I'm not trying to say, oh, it's a good thing. Somehow it's like a
Like
badge
it's a
of
badge of
honor.
honor. It's a
It's a
badge
badge
of
of
honor.
honor. You're divorced in your 30s and you're single. And I'm like, I don't think it's okay. She has the right to have her perspective. And at the same point of time, if we start celebrating that we can't keep a relationship, what are we leading ourselves to? Right. And I'm not saying to be in a bad relationship. That would never be my recommendation. I am on my second marriage myself. Right. So it's not, but I wouldn't still say, like, my wife is my second wife. My first person, it didn't work out between us, and so did my wife. And my wife had to leave her partner because he was physically abusive. Right. So I understand that it could be reasons for it to not work out, and at the same point in time, there is at some point we have to also take the responsibility, Scott. And I think I'm saying this to you because I know you have a successful marriage as well. Is that we have to take that responsibility of saying, hey, listen, we don't only want to show icons who couldn't make it work. We also want to have people that go, no, you can have a beautiful life and you can have a partner. That's not a prerequisite to end your relationship just because you want to be financially successful. That's not a, it doesn't have to, it doesn't, you can be financially successful and have a wonderful relationship and a beautiful body and a great parent and can be a great parent and have time for your friends and travel in the world. I think that's all possible till the time you know what you want. And I think that's a good example to set for the world. So I'm glad your team is asking to share more. My team does that too, and I make my best effort to do so, especially on my stories, so people can see. Listen, I'm not one dimensional, looking at a camera all the time, just talking about how you should live your life. I am living my life. I'm just sharing my experience.
Yeah, the hardest part, I think, when you're doing it, and you can correct me if I'm wrong from your perspective, but the hardest part is when you're truly present and you're truly just in a moment, to stop for a second and capture it can be challenging.
It's
And
very
I think
challenging.
that's really the you have to be so in tune with that seems to be one of the challenges. And I have no problem with being present where I'm at. It's more so capturing it, and I'm capturing it. Like if I go to a concert, I love to sit. I love to experience the concert. I'm not recording the entire thing. I record a moment so I can capture it, but that's about it. And that's, I think, what we're trying to get at is just a small piece of the puzzle, not the whole puzzle.
And I think you won't be able to capture everything. That's an impossible thing. You'll just have to be walking around with a recording device, and which some people do. Good for them,
Yeah.
and you can do that too. But I think the key is to show the multidimensionality. So how I do it, Scott, and this is optional to you and optional to anybody that's listening, is have your regular day, and one of your regular days, just invite a team member and let them record it. You're just having a regular day. It's like, hey, listen, I today, you know what? We're going on date night. Would you join us for the first hour? Right? And they can join for the first hour. They can have a great meal with you. But then after that, they bounce, and now you have your date night. Hey,
Right.
listen, you know what? Uh, I'm just taking my kid to the game that I take every week. Can you join us today? And they just record you for whatever 20, 30 minutes, and then they can bounce. So you're capturing through. I'm the benefit you and I get to have, Scott, is we have teams. Not everybody can afford to do so, but that's how I am doing it right now. Is I just have my team members coming in at points that are I feel I can share, and I don't want to keep it like it's okay to not be completely private, and it's not every day. It's like once in a month or twice in a month or something like that, and I think it works out.
Tell me, go back for 1 second. Tell me about you went through this transformational moment of merging your company. There's a financial benefit. There's a transformational moment in your marriage, in your life, where you're reestablishing. What were some of the big things that came out of that moment for you? What was the North Star, if you will? What were some of the things that you're focused on going forward? Anything changed dramatically, or was it more of just the same and maybe amplified in a couple of areas?
I think amplified in a couple of areas. For our personal relationship, we've been blessed in a way that me and my wife both have had really honest conversations at all times in our relationship. And because of that, we're very clear what's our desires around experiences of life. And because they're very clear, we get to play a slightly different game when we get a big, say, windfall in the sense of a transaction that came through, because we get to simply ask, do we want to upgrade the lifestyle we already have? Do we already enjoy it enough that we don't necessarily need to upgrade it? And we didn't need to upgrade it. We were like, no, we really love the lifestyle that we have. We're also not people who, like, both of us are simple people eventually. What we really want is experiences for ourselves and for our families and extended family. Like for my parents, for her parents, everything, right? Not her parents, but her uncles and aunts that are
Right.
like parent now to her. So we want to do all of that, and we do all of that, but that's pretty much it. We're not the people who like, big fancy things and gold watches and all that. It doesn't give us any joy. We've tested it. We've bought those. Like, it made absolutely zero impact in my life. It makes me feel nothing. And so we don't care for it anymore. So lifestyle wise, we didn't want to do any upgrades. We wanted to make some changes in our life. So we've agreed to that, and we're making those changes in our life in context of location and where we want to live and how far, and so on and so forth. So we'll be making those changes in the coming months. Work wise, my biggest realization was that I absolutely don't want to retire. Like, I could retire today if I wanted to, right? And I was like, no, I love what I do so much that it'll actually break me if I had to retire. Like, I just love it, right? I love the experience. I love the journey. I love the creation of it. I love all of it. So I was even more clear. I was always clear that I didn't think I would want to retire. And that's when I talked to my financial people, like, what age do you want to retire? I was like, never really.
Never.
But there's a number and an age that we chase to. But honestly, I don't think I'm going to retire at that time. But that's a number if you need one to put it into your software to tell you your analysis of whatever you need me to tell, or you need to tell me. But I don't necessarily care about it. So that's kind of where I am in life. I love everything that I get to do, how I get to show up, uh, who I get to do it with, like all of it. So that's another piece that I think is very important, and that happens when and that's why it's that those questions that I gave away in the starting are so important. I want to reflect them back. Is if you know how much money you need, why you make that money, how much you need, you suddenly have a great amount of peace, irrespective of you can get a big windfall. It makes zero difference. It doesn't make me more egoistic. It doesn't make me want to flaunt anymore or anything like that, because it adds nothing to my life. It is a great experience. I'm grateful for it. I'm enjoying it. At the same point of time, I know how much I want. I know what kind of life I want to live, and I get to live it every day. So I don't have to worry about these things. And that's kind of so peaceful in the way I create money. And I think I create a lot more because of it, which is a little bit more metaphysical. But I think the more you understand that you're always rewarded what you deserve, right? So if you're making a certain amount of money, it is fair compensation. It is absolutely fair. That's exactly how much you need to make for now. It doesn't mean that's your limitation. It doesn't mean that tomorrow you can't make more, but to accept that you're fairly compensated at all times gives you freedom, because you're not stressing out about money. You're not thinking somebody else is evil. You're not thinking how they're out to get you. The world is the way the world is. You can't do anything about it, right? That's the thing that you don't control. What you can control is your state. When you start to go, I'm always fairly compensated, which means as much money I make is what I deserve for now, right? It allows you to stay in the presence of, okay, then what do I need to do to make a better fair compensation? right? Now you can operate from a place of growth instead of thinking from a place of lack, instead of thinking, oh, everybody's out to get me and everybody's attacking me and I've not got the right raise and I've not got the right bonus. Screw all of that. You're always fairly compensated. Now work towards how to get better and get more compensated to be in the alignment of fair compensation for you.
I have a lot of conversations around this and have coached a lot of individuals on this topic because so often people establish goals for themselves with no purpose of why they want them. And so going back to your question, if you're trying to create a rich life, you pretty much need to establish why you're doing it. I had a conversation with a gentleman a couple of weeks ago, and he's earning a million and some change a year. And he said, "Hey, I really want to start to acquire companies, and I'm really curious at how you did that and what you're doing." And I said, "Okay, well, can I start with one question? Why is it that you want to do this?" And he goes, "Well, I just think I can." And I said, "Okay, but what do you do right now that you love?" And he goes, "Well, I spend a lot of time with my kids and I do this." And I said, "You realize when you acquire a company, there's a transition that goes in, and transitions are bumpy and rough and they're never perfect. And the individual that's leaving is never super happy about stepping away. It's very rare that you get these conversations with people like you and I who have thought about these things at deep levels and maybe been planning for them for a long time. You get people that have never planned, never thought about it." And I said, "So you're asking to take your life from order to chaos for a certain amount of money. And what I'm asking you is, what will that couple $100,000 a year of cash flow do to you that's going to change your life?" They couldn't answer the question. And no one can ever answer that question until they establish exactly what's important to them and why it's important to them. So
Yeah.
that is liberating. It is, once you know
Right.
that, it's very liberating.
That is so true. Yeah.
What's next for you? So, I want to make sure our listeners have a chance to follow you. I want to make sure that they can get more. I know that you have spent your life teaching, coaching, and developing people to believe in themselves in a way that maybe they weren't sure they had it in them. And you're helping to change the world that way. And I love that about you. How are some of the ways people can find you? And then what's next for you?
So the best way to find me is my Instagram account. That's where I'm most active. It's at Real Coach Ajit, at Real Coach Ajit, and that's where I post most of my material, and that's where I do the giveaways. That's where my seminar invitations and everything goes. So that's where to be a good place to go check out more of the work that I'm doing in the world. If you're more interested in the money dialogue and the money story, again, it depends on when this podcast really comes out, but I am in the middle of writing a book around money, and that might come out somewhere later half of this year. So we're talking around July 2024. That's the time we are recording this. It will come out close to, I would think, around November 2024.
Great.
So it is, unless something pushes it back. So that would be a good place to start. If not, if this comes out around September, again, watch out for my stories because I'm producing a whole new program at Mind Valley that focuses on money.
Well, that's wonderful. It's been a pleasure to listen to your thoughts and to share our stories together. It's always great to get to know new people. It's my favorite part of doing this podcast, and I just wanted to thank you for being a part of it today and helping our listeners think differently and challenge themselves with great questions to help themselves, their relationships, and hopefully the future self.
Thanks so much, Scott. Thank you for inviting me and giving me space to be able to talk about this.
I hope you enjoyed this podcast. If you liked it, there's more where this one came from. Click here and enjoy some more.